many of you have heard of Socrates? He lived in Greece about 2,500 years ago. How many of you have heard of him? Well, he was considered a great philosopher, but before he was a philosopher, he had actually fought in the war, and he was a decorated hero during the war that Athens had with Persia. And he also was a craftsman. He was a potter. And one day a man came into his studio, and he told Socrates that he had gone to see the oracle of the god Apollo in Delphi, and when he asked the oracle who was the wisest person in the world, that the oracle said, well, Socrates of Athens, of course. Now, does anyone know anything about the oracle of Delphi? Okay, the oracle of Delphi, this is a person who supposedly spoke what the god Apollo told him. And Delphi actually exists in Greek. It's a small community. It's way high in the mountains. And people would go to the oracle to seek to answer questions and get answers supposedly that were given by the gods. So when Socrates heard that the oracle said he was the wisest man in the world, he was puzzled. He had never thought of himself as being wise, and certainly not the wisest person in the world. And he decided, therefore, that he needed to search this out, because he was a devout man, and he took what the gods said seriously. So he took a year off from his work, and he started going around any of the Greek-speaking countries, and he talked to people who were reputed to be the wise people. He talked to doctors, lawyers, generals, politicians, teachers, priests, and he kept talking to them about what they did. And after he'd spent a year doing this, he began to understand why the oracle thought perhaps he was the wisest person in the world, because what he learned, basically, were two things he learned as he talked to these supposedly wise people. First of all, a lot of these wise people didn't know as much as they thought they knew. And more importantly, he realized that they were also not aware of what they didn't know. And this is where Socrates felt that it made him much wiser, is because he was aware of when he didn't know something. And that idea of knowing when you don't know something is also a very important quality of a scientist. And this year, I told you at the beginning of the school year, you would be acting like scientists. You've been doing experiments, you've been collecting data, analyzing it, and you've been developing a mental model, which we're currently testing. Well, this is what scientists do. And one of the qualities of a good scientist is that they be skeptical, and that they also are aware of when they don't know something. So today I'm going to be doing some experiments up here, and I'm going to ask you questions, and sometimes you may find out that your best answer is you don't have enough information. So what you're going to need to do during this time that I'm presenting these activities up here is you're going to need to be able to separate what you know from what you don't know. Now, in terms of what the goal of this particular activity will be today, I'm going to ask you to come up with a way to figure out whether these cubes will float or sink in a liquid without my actually putting them in. So your goal is to figure out whether these cubes will float or sink in the liquid without actually putting them into the liquid. That's the goal. Now, everything I do up here, there's not any tricks. What you see is what's actually happening. I want you to understand that. And the way you're going to be evaluated today, because I am going to grade this, but the criteria I'm going to use, there's three pieces of criteria. The first one is you're going to be asked to write in this, and I'm going to expect you to complete all sections. Another criteria, if you turn to the back of the first page, you're going to see where it has the word observation, and parentheses it says use full sentences. Wherever they ask you to write in sentences, I'm going to expect you to do that. And finally, I want you to write legibly so I can read it. So these are the three criteria I'll be evaluating you on. These you should be able to easily do. I'm not going to evaluate you on the content, only on this criteria right here. Now, if you look also at on the back of that first page, you're going to see a section that says observations. Whenever you're asked to do an observation, it's very important that you just include the facts. You're only going to be describing what you saw, what your senses perceived. You're not going to be making any kinds of interpretations. You're not going to explain anything. It's just what you observe. And you want to do it clearly enough so if someone were not here, they could read what you wrote and they would know what took place in this room. So whenever you're asked to do an observation, you don't want to interpret anything. All you're doing is describing what you observed, and I'll be asking you to describe what I did and what happened. And that's all you're going to do. There shouldn't be any interpretations at all during this part. Is that clear? For prediction 1, I have this cube, and I would like you to predict whether this cube will float or sink, or if you don't have enough information, check that, if I were to put it into this liquid. And then after you do that, I want you to give me the reason why you made that prediction. So you're going to predict whether this cube will float, whether it will sink, or if you don't have enough information, indicate that, and then give me the reason why you said that. Now what I'm going to want you to do is to describe what I did and what happened, okay? So make sure you can see what I'm doing. If you need to adjust where you're sitting, please feel free to do so. Okay? I want you to describe what I just did and what happened. And you want to do it in such a way that if someone were not here, they would know what took place. And you also want to make sure you're just describing what you observed. You're not explaining anything or interpreting, just what you observe. Question?
Can you write and can you also draw?
You can do whatever you want to for this. Okay, everyone ready for prediction 2? If you look up here, I have a smaller cube this time. And there's something I want to show you about this smaller cube. It has the same mass as a larger cube. And so if I put this on the mass balance, the larger cube, it should be about the same. The mass balance has been a little uncooperative today. That's a larger cube. If I put the smaller cube on, see that the mass is basically the same thing. So keep that in mind. They have the same mass. What I want you to do for prediction 2 is to predict whether this cube will float, sink, or if you don't have enough information, indicate that if I put it into this liquid. Then give the reason why you said that. Okay, everyone ready? Ready? Okay. Again, you're going to describe what I did and what happened. Okay, you'll notice I have the large cube again. And again, I'd like you to make a prediction about whether this cube will float, sink, or if you don't have enough information, indicate that if I put it into this liquid. Okay, everyone ready? Okay. Again, you're going to describe what I did and what happened. Okay, here we go. Okay, everyone look up here for prediction 4. I'd like you to predict again whether this will float, sink, or if you don't have enough information, indicate that if I put it into this liquid. I'm going to predict whether this cube will float, sink, or If you don't have enough information, indicate it, and then tell me why you said that. Okay. For observation 4. For the first thought experiment, one of the things I want to mention is that sometimes scientists, for whatever reason, cannot conduct experiments. And sometimes what they'll do is come up with thought experiments they could do. And Albert Einstein was always doing that. In fact, he and his friend Niels Bohr, who we'll be talking about later on this year, used to continuously devise thought experiments that they'd work through. And usually Niels Bohr won because both of them had different views of how the universe worked. Niels Bohr tended to be more successful in the thought experiments than Einstein was. Well, we're going to do a thought experiment right now. What I have here is a mystery cube, and it's the same size as this cube. But what I want you to do is consider two possibilities with this mystery cube. The first possibility I want you to consider is, if this cube were lighter than these cubes, what do you predict would happen if I put it into these liquids? Will it float, sink, or if you don't have enough information, indicate that. Then the second possibility is, if this cube were heavier than these cubes, what do you predict will happen if I put it into these liquids? Will it float, sink, or if you don't have enough information, indicate that. So you're considering two possibilities. The first possibility, if the cube is lighter, what will it do in these liquids? And the second possibility is, if it's heavier, what will it do in these liquids? Then give the reason why you made that prediction. So I'm going to have you do that right now in thought experiment 1. Okay, let's consider thought experiment 2. We've been talking about cubes. Now I want you to think about a mystery liquid. And what I want you to think about is, what properties would a mystery liquid have to have in order for this cube to be able to float in it? Now, just some information about this cube. Its mass is 2 grams. And one length of one of its sides is 1 centimeter. So what properties would a mystery liquid have to have so that when you put this cube in it, it's going to float? The cube, again, has a mass of 2 grams and the length of one side is 1 centimeter. So that's what I want you to do for thought experiment 2.